welcome to part 2 of my reading thing that I'm doing this year, where I'm trying to read the 12 books that I set out to read. Recap. I've already done 3 books so far. In my last video, the first one, I did the first 3 books of the year that I read. But it took me super long time to actually read the second book, because I just stopped reading after the beginning and it was a whole thing, but I eventually got back into it. Now I'm really into it. I'm already halfway through the goal now. I've just finished the 6th book like 2 days ago. We are now on to the next episode. Like 2 weeks later, almost exactly on the day, I've already finished the next 3 books, which is why I said that I felt very confident about being able to finish the next 9 before the end of the year. I kind of ran out of books to read that I had like just in my mind of like, oh, I have to read that. So I just had to come up with these on the spot. Carrie, I said in my last vlog that's not vlog, but like review, that's what I was reading. That I was reading Carrie, and I had already started it, and I was worried about the word, like the daily reading goal thing on my iPad. I got rid of that because I decided that if I ever wanted to switch to a paperback book, then I would lose that reading streak because it only applies to the Books app. I didn't want to constantly have it restarting itself. Anyway, I read Carrie. I'm just gonna give you my star rating of it right now. Boom. I gave it 7.5 stars out of 10. That's 75%. I'd say I'm 75% happy with this book. This book is really good. It's good that it's short. This book is only 60,000 words. As far as I know, to my knowledge, this was the first book that Stephen King ever got published. Don't correct me if I'm wrong, but it definitely reads like a Stephen King book. As someone who has read parts of other Stephen King books, like I read 300 pages of another one, and then I just stopped reading it, but that was like 7 years ago. It definitely reads the same way, but you can tell that he's not the same person he is now. Like, you can see the evolution in the writing, that this is not the Stephen King in the 70s. I think this was published in the 70s. I don't know. He just feels newer and like a better writer nowadays. But you can still see him in his writing back then, of course. And what I have to say about this book, it's a lot more touching, as I put it, than a lot of people think. And I've also never seen any of the movie adaptations for this, but knowing that none of the movie adaptations cast Carrie the right way kind of ruins all of them if you've ever read the book and not seen the movies, because the whole point in the book of why she's so bullied is for her appearance, but then in the movies they both cast conventionally attractive actors to play Carrie. And it's like, okay, but that's missing the whole point of the book, which is why Stephen King hates all of the Carrie adaptations. Yeah, I'm on Stephen King's side with this. I like what he does with Carrie way more than what I can imagine any of those movies do with Carrie. Like, they try to make her like this weird femme fatale trope. That's not what she is at all. She's a person who's severely bullied all her life because her mother is a religious extremist to the point where she thinks that having had her child at all makes her full of sin. And she's horribly abusive, and Carrie is bullied at school because of her appearance and because of her mother. At the end of the book, sort of the end, she uses her telekinetic power to kill everyone in the school on prom night. And this isn't a spoiler. This is literally revealed to you like at the start of the book. And the whole book takes place over like a week, maybe a week. I'd say probably a week, of the week leading up to prom. And I think the part I liked least about this book was the random inclusion of like fictional books written about the events that take place, just like quotes from them taken and put into the book. You know what I mean? Like we would get this great scene happening, you know, with the events of the book, and then we'd get like this weird 1-page long passage from a fake book that was written years in the future about the incident that we just read or that we were going to read. And most of them just ended up feeling out of place. They felt like they kind of just slowed the story down, but maybe that's coming from the perspective of someone who already knows everything that happens, so kind of like rereading it through the eyes of these fake books is annoying just because of that. But, you know, either way, if I were to tell Stephen King what to rewrite about the book, I would remove those passages. Like, I don't think they're necessary. Some of them were fine, like having the book about Sue Snell, who is like the only survivor of that night because she didn't go to prom. And, you know, deservedly so that she was the only survivor, because she's like one of the only people you want to survive, you know, because she's the only one who realizes that, hey, maybe bullying Carrie isn't such a good thing. Maybe we ought to be nice to this person and not totally fake and mean and bully her all the time for existing. Maybe, like, what a concept. And she really goes above and beyond by making her boyfriend, who's not reluctant to do so, take Carrie to prom for real and not like totally fake. And he's totally great too. Great character. And then because of what 2 other characters do, because they can't get over the fact that Carrie is the reason that they end up not being able to go to prom because of the bullying thing, and they get in trouble, and I'm not explaining it well, but you know, there's this whole plot that making Carrie kill everyone at prom is because they dump pig's blood all over her and her date, who is Sue's boyfriend, who she, you know, asked Carrie to go to prom with her, or with him. This whole pig's blood plot line is all the result of, what's her name, Chris, being not kicked out of prom, but not allowed to go to prom because of what she did to Carrie in the bathroom at the very start of the book, the first scene, which is a great scene. I'm glad that Chris dies. Anyway, this review is very jumbled. I'm not speaking coherently. If you know anything about the book or the movie, I mean, I really hope you haven't seen the movies, because I haven't, and I don't want to. That's all I have to say. 7.5, that's what I give it. I think it's deserving, and it's only gonna go downhill from here when we move on to our next book. Another Brooklyn. That's right, I'm spoiling it. I'm giving this book less than 7.5. What did I end up giving it? Okay. I gave that book 3 stars. I think I actually reduced it from 3.5 to 3, because the more I thought about it, the more I realized I don't love this book. Like, I really don't. It's just okay. And there's a number of reasons why I think that. This book is extremely short. If Carrie is short, at only like 60,000 words, this is like a third of that at most, maybe 25,000 words, probably shorter though, because it only took me 2 days to read, and like maybe 3 hours. This book reads like an independent film. The book is fine and the plot is fine, but my biggest gripe is that all of the scenes are way too short. It's basically like this slam poetry thing where each scene could be like 3 sentences of almost nothing, and then we'll move on to the next scene. a lot of the scenes are more substantive than that. They have more going for them. But my biggest gripe with this story is not the story itself, it's the way it's told. I just think I'm not a fan of this kind of writing. Like, I'm the kind of person who needs something a little bit more concrete in my writing. You know what I mean? Like, the story was definitely there. I was getting a story from it, but I wasn't getting enough from that story or the way it was told to give it anything more than a 6. You get what I'm saying? And I'm giving it a 6 more than a 5, because it doesn't overstay its welcome. It certainly doesn't. But the way the story is told, which, is there even like a synopsis to read? For August, running into a long ago friend sets in motion resonant memories and transports her to a time and place she thought she had mislaid. 1970s Brooklyn, where her friendship was everything. August, Sylvia, Angela, and Gigi shared confidences as they ambled their neighborhood streets, a place where the girls believed that they were amazingly beautiful, brilliant, talented, with a future that belonged to them. But beneath the hopeful promise, there was another Brooklyn, a dangerous place where grown men reached for innocent girls in dark hallways, where mothers disappeared, where fathers found religion, and where madness was a mere sunset away. Jacqueline Woodson's Another Brooklyn heartbreakingly illuminates the formative period when a child meets adulthood, where precious innocence meets the all too real perils of growing up. In prose exquisite and lyrical, sensuous and tender, Woodson breathes life into memories, portraying an indelible friendship that united young lives. Another Brooklyn is an enthralling work of literature from one of our most gifted novelists. Yeah, okay. Not feeling too hot about it, mostly because of the lyrical nature of it. And I guess the more I think about it, it definitely is told a lot like she's just thinking about it, not linearly, because the story isn't necessarily told linearly, but I got where we were every time. But everything feels too sparse. It feels like we're getting these little snippets, but we're never getting enough. You get what I'm saying? Like, if this book were told in such a way where we had half the number of scenes and each scene was just more, I think it would be better. Like, it's like we're going to like a buffet and we're getting one piece of everything, but at the end you're like, wow, I'm full, but I feel like I didn't have a meal because I ate one of 20 different things instead of like 5 of 4 things. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it feels like. It feels like I got a bunch of pieces of something, but I didn't get a complete story that I came for. That's the best way to summarize what I didn't like about this book and why it's just getting a 6. Because I didn't hate the book or the story, I just didn't necessarily love the way it was told. That brings us to our next book. Oh boy, do I have something to say about The Hobbit. I'm going to preface this by saying, and I don't have a physical copy for this one either, just like I didn't have one for Carrie, because we actually have 2 copies of The Hobbit at my house and 1 copy of Carrie at my house, so I wasn't going to buy paperbacks for those. So yeah, so let's start with what I know about The Hobbit. What I know about The Hobbit before going into this book was that I love the first movie, and that's it. The first movie, 10 out of 10.
That'll be the door.
Shit, he's here.
Gandalf.
No, you can't come in. You come to the wrong house.
I am betrayed. Bilbo
Dragons!
allow me to introduce the leader of our company, Sorin Cunchill.
So, this is The Hobbit.
Everything else, you couldn't pay me to watch it. You couldn't pay me to watch Desolation of Smaug or Battle of the Five Armies. You can't. I won't. You could pay me to watch Unexpected Journey, or I could do it for free. And the big thing is, I used to think that, oh, the other two movies just weren't good because of the studios. You know, they were pushing too much to change the story. And obviously, if the first book is the one that sticks, or the first movie is the one that sticks most closely to the book, then obviously I'm going to enjoy the plot of the second and third movie way more when I'm reading them on the page, right? Because I'll be reading the original story, just like what most of the first movie is, which now, having read the book, I can absolutely confirm they are very, very similar, like, you know, as similar as you can get adapting a book like that for the screen, especially with some of the dialogue writing, which is just not good in the book. But I was wrong. I don't like the story of the second and third movie in the book or on the screen. It's just boring. My takeaway from reading The Hobbit is that everything up until the end of, what is it, chapter 5, 6, 7, Out of the Frying Pan and Into the Fire is the last good chapter. The stuff with Bjorn is like okay, but it's nothing special, and everything after that is just slow and boring and not funny, not interesting. All of the songs after Out of the Frying Pan and Into the Fire are bad, they're boring. It got to the point where I just started skipping them. Like, if I knew it was a song, I would read everything but the song and just skip right over it, because I wasn't going to get any enjoyment out of reading the song. Like, just reading the lyrics, I was not, no. What can I say? Tolkien strikes again. And by strikes again, I mean this is the first time he's ever struck. Because this is the first book of his that I've ever read, and the first book in the Lord of the Rings universe that he ever wrote, of course. Or at least that he ever published. Another big gripe about this book is that some of the dialogue feels horrible. Like, it's like he didn't know how to write dialogue. This way the story is told doesn't feel like a fairy tale, but the way he writes the dialogue makes it seem like he's telling an awful fairy tale by someone who doesn't know how people talk. I don't know. I could have done with better dialogue. Not all of the characters were bad, but some of the time where Bilbo was talking especially was bad. Also, there are mistakes in this book. And apparently, as someone told me, it's considered by fans that Bilbo was the one who made the mistakes while writing, not Tolkien. I don't know what to say about that. Like, the part sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's a mistake of where Bilbo is. Like, Bilbo switches between the backs of two people and then back to the first one within one page, and there's no explanation for that. Like, it's just a mistake in the book that leapt off the page. And that's another thing. He changes how he spells words multiple times in this book. The most glaring one is that he starts the entire book, the first like 2/3 of the book, he only spells it this way. And you might be thinking, Sam, how did you notice that? And it's because why was a British man spelling this word that way? That's what stuck out to me. And then 2/3 of the way through the book, he just switches to this spelling. I'm like, and it remains consistent. He only uses this spelling for the first 2/3, and then he switches to only this spelling for the whole rest of the book. Like, where did that come from? Is this just like awful copy editing? Were there like 3 people who were taking this from typewritten pages to print, and they just made horrible mistakes that nobody caught? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. This book really reads sometimes like it's 1,000 years old. So let's get to what I liked about the book. The entire first, 7 chapters? As I said, all great, all fantastic. They read super well, they jump off the page. No complaints with them whatsoever, except, some of the lack of the comedy that I get from the first movie.
That'll be the door. That'll be the door. The door. That'll be the
Wallet.
Evening, brother.
I would have preferred to have seen that, but you know, maybe he just doesn't like to have a laugh. Anyway, so, oh, did I ever say what my review of this book was gonna be? I decided to give this book 3.5 stars. 7. It gets a 7 out of 10. Right? Yeah. And it's only for the first part of the book. I'm only giving it a 7 because the first part of the book makes up for so much of what the latter 2/3 lack. The latter 2/3 weren't the worst thing I've ever read, but I'm not excited to ever read those again if I ever want to read the entire book, is what I'm saying. But I feel like the first part makes up so much for what they lack that maybe I'm rating this too highly. I don't know. I don't care about the Wood Elves. I don't care about Mirkwood. I don't care about Bard and his weird plot line. I don't understand why he wasn't introduced at all sooner in the story if he was going to become like such a big part of the end of the book. And I don't like that Gandalf isn't there for so much of the book too. Like, I get that he was doing stuff, and we see that in the movie. Like, that's another thing that the first movie does so much better than the book, is it doesn't just tell us, oh, Gandalf was going somewhere. Like, no. He says in the book he was dealing with the necromancer, and guess what we see him do in the movie? Deal with it. Like, we actually see it. And I love that. And also we get to see Radagast the Brown. Why wouldn't I want that? Why Tolkien feels inclined to mention him but never show him on the page? That's odd. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I think that's it. Preview for next time. The first book I'm reading, and currently reading, this book, The Catcher in the Rye. I've been sleeping on this. Let's just put it that way. This is gearing up to be highly rated. So you're gonna want to stick around for episode 3 when that comes out in probably 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. And then we're also going to be doing another classic, Lord of the Flies. And then we're gonna spice it up by doing a contemporary translated fiction. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Hopefully I enjoy this next batch of 3 books more than I enjoyed what I read the last 2 weeks.